Coming to you from the University of Minnesota, Rochester, our town.
Welcome to Our Town, the show about Rochester. I'm Nicole Nfonoyim Hara, and today we're talking with the candidates for Rochester Mayor. Charlie O'Connell and Kim Norton are here with me at the University of Minnesota, Rochester for what's sure to be an excellent conversation. Stick around.
Our Town is brought to you in part by the following amazing people and organizations:
the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota,
and the members of KSMQ Public Television. Thank you.
Rochester Mayor Arnell Brady has been leading the city since 2003. He decided not to run for re-election, creating an open seat which drew quite a field of candidates. We're joined today by the two candidates who made it through the primary process, Kim Norton and Charlie O'Connell. Welcome, both of you. And as full disclosure, Kim Norton is a member of KSMQ Public Television Board of Directors. So happy to have you both here with us today. And I thought that to start, we could just have you share a little bit about yourselves. And I'll start with you, Charlie.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here. My name is Charlie O'Connell. My wife and myself have been here in Rochester for the past 18 years. We have 3 kids that we've been raising in Rochester. And several months ago, when the idea first came up when I found out that Mayor Brady wasn't going to be running, seeking re-election, I started to discuss with different people around the community and really decided at that point that this was a position that I wanted to go after, one that I wanted to be able to help continue to see Rochester grow in a positive direction. So through the past several months, I've been able to go out and meet thousands and thousands of people, and it's just been a great experience so far, having the opportunity to learn more about not only the processes and some of the places that we can have some efficiencies within our own city government, but also to see the things that we're doing quite well. And so it's just been a great experience so far.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Kim Norton, as you mentioned, and I moved to Rochester a number of years ago now, almost 30 years ago, in 1990 with my family. I raised my kids here in the Rochester Public Schools and was a very involved citizen. I served on a lot of nonprofit boards, worked in special ed for a little while, and eventually served on the school board. So it was from that experience representing the kids and the parents in this community that I sort of grew that passion for public service. So I served on the school board for 8 years, and then I went to the legislature. That was a difficult decision at the time because I had never really thought of politics as a direction that I would go, but I wanted to get more funding for the schools, and I was working in a lot of public health issues at the time, children's health in particular, and that's where policy is set and the money was. And so I did run for office, and I served in the Minnesota House of Representatives for 10 years. I retired 2 years ago and was really fortunate to get a Bush Fellowship, and I applied for that because I wanted to bring the leadership skills I had to a different level. I wanted to be a transformational leader in my community, and so at that time I thought, well, maybe I'll run for mayor if Ardell retires, or maybe I'll work in the nonprofit world or do something, but I knew I wanted to be out of partisan politics and back here in Rochester. And so, of course, as was mentioned, when Ardell decided to retire, it opened the door for a new type of leadership in a time when our community is changing. And so I think I bring those skills, and I'm really looking forward to it.
So you mentioned, Charlie, that you've been meeting people. The campaign cycle is almost over. Can you talk a little bit about perhaps one of the big needs that people in the community are articulating as you're out there talking to people? Kim?
Oh, well, certainly I've been doing a lot of door knocking and holding numerous meet and greets, and it's just a fabulous opportunity to talk to people and hear what their concerns are. The main issue I hear is in topics is affordable housing. That seems to be on the tip of everyone's tongue. Certainly, having safe neighborhoods is important to people, and frankly, the Destination Medical Center. People are really concerned that as our community grows and changes, that it keeps the citizens that live here in mind when those changes are, come to bear. And so they're very concerned about that, and they've been really good conversations.
Well, when I started my initial conversations with people, there were those topics that really came to the top. One of them being safety and security, and then of course the affordable housing, alternate transportation and affordable daycare, and of course the big one, DMC. But the one thing that I've really taken away from all the people that I've been able to have the opportunity to meet with is that there's really a new drive to be part of the community and to be recognized as part of the community. So as I've started with this journey, I've had just such a fantastic opportunity to meet so many of the different cultures that live here in Rochester. And I think that that's one of the biggest takeaways for me here is that we are a very rich cultural city here. And so in order to recognize that, in order to help people understand what the processes are so that they can become more involved in our city government, to have their voices heard, is something that's very, very important, and something that if I'm fortunate enough to become the next mayor, that I'll ensure actually occurs, because that's been part of the frustration with a lot of these, with a lot of the different groups that we have here, is that they feel that although they've been living here in the community for a great number of years, that they still haven't been fully incorporated into our city. And so to be able to take advantage of that and know what those different demographics are is something I'm looking very forward to.
Thank you. And speaking about that very rich diversity, that growing diversity, if you were elected mayor, what steps would you take to maybe ensure that there was more representation of those diverse communities on city committees and boards? Kim?
Well, certainly we need to diversify our boards, not only ethnically and culturally, but gender-wise as well. I serve on the Energy Committee. I'm the second woman on that committee. It's primarily men, and that's true of a lot of the committees. And also, as Charlie said, we have just a really rich community, a really rich and diverse community, and we need as government to be more inclusive. So as mayor, you get to make appointments to committees and commissions. I have kind of a twofold approach to that. One is we need to look at those commissions and committees and do an assessment of what skill sets are there and what skill sets are needed. So part of that is actually looking at the committees and determine what are the needs of that committee. And the second is we have training programs in this community through the chamber and other outside groups, Ready to Lead and some others, that train people to be involved in these committees, but they never get asked. So part of it is reaching out to people who've been through those trainings, and frankly people who haven't, and asking if they would like to be part of those commissions and committees. So it's very much a purposeful ask, not just passive, which is, I think, a little bit about what's been happening in the past, and we need to change that.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that the mayor can do is to help people understand the process, because right now it's a very long and convoluted process. And so if people don't understand how to volunteer to serve on these different boards and committees, it makes it difficult for them to volunteer their service. And also when they apply or fill out the application packet, it's very cumbersome. And so I think that there's a lot of efficiencies that we could improve upon to make it a lot easier for people to become involved on serving on these different boards. And whenever you have citizens that are volunteering their time in order to help the rest of the community, I think that we need to do everything that we can so that people are aware of the different openings that are out there. Again, to look at, to make sure that we have a good balance of people that are serving on it, both men and women, and both, also representing all the different, or as many of the different demographics that are here in Rochester as well too. So again, I think that the mayor can really bring a lot of visibility to that overall posting of the positions, and for helping people understand what their roles and responsibilities would be if they served upon those boards.
Are there any specific, ideas you have about how to do that, how to increase that visibility or that transparency?
There really is, and I think that the city has recognized it as well too, because one of the latest positions that was newly created here in the city is a communications manager. And really that city communications manager I would work with and collaborate with to ensure that we are using all of the different types of delivery platforms that are possible to enable people to understand that there's these openings. Because again, if we look at it that we're just going to post within the newspapers or radio or whatever the case may be, we have to look at where people are going to get information about the city. So I think that there's a great opportunity to be very creative of utilizing the social media platforms that we have right now, and to actually get out and to talk with these community members and to let them know one-on-one that these are the opportunities that are there. Because if we are just doing nothing more than making a posting for these openings, I think that we're doing a disservice to those individuals that want to be able to serve, but they just don't have the information or the knowledge that these openings are there.
Did you want to respond to that?
Well, as you can tell, we've had this question asked us numerous times, and we both agree on really the basis for this. But I would say we do have a new communications director, but she also is focusing on civic engagement. And so what I would add to this conversation is that one of my goals has been to really build strong neighborhoods. And through those strong neighborhoods, one idea I had was to work with the councilmen and women and host ward events, one or two times a year. I want to hold them in places in each ward that people who live there may not have experienced. City parks, rec centers, and ask and really be really purposeful with the ward member, the councilman, to do an invite and to work together jointly, because the community doesn't comfortably engage with government. In some communities there's distrust, and so it's about building the relationships that we need to, and one of the ways we can do that is through these ward and city council communications.
So we'll switch gears a little bit here, and you did mention both in your comments about Destination Medical Center, which often takes up a lot of the conversation, but I just wanted to ask you, what would you establish as maybe a top priority around your mayoral role in relation to Destination Medical Center?
Well, one of the things that I've noted, we passed the legislation a number of years ago now, and I would like to see a stronger positioning by the city council and the mayoral and the county board members in making the decisions, more active participation by those people in making the decisions about what Destination Medical Center will mean for our community. As mayor, you have a position, you have a seat at the table on the DMCC board. And so for me, again, it's having a strong voice, not being afraid to stand up when it's necessary, to have a vision, and I have quite a vision for our community with sustainability and community engagement, and those are things that we can do as DMCC board members.
Well, we'll be right back to hear more and to hear from you, Charlie, your thoughts when we return. Thank you.
Our town. It's all about you, Rochester. Send us a picture of your favorite feature of Rochester. Rochester at KSMQ.org.
Welcome back, both of you. We were talking about priorities that you would set as mayors for Destination Medical Center. Charlie?
So again, for myself, is that I would want to make sure that I'm listening to the concerns that are out in the community right now. And because the mayoral seat is just one of the key roles on that DMCC board, is that we have to make sure that the mayor, being the top representative of our city, are really listening to the concerns that citizens have about the multitude of DMC projects that are out there. And so again, I think that with the effective communication, being as transparent as possible, and letting people know exactly what types of decisions, what types of projects are coming up, and how they're going to benefit all of the citizens in Rochester is going to be very, very important. because there's still, I think, a misperception out there that only a few organizations or entities are going to really benefit from the DMC project, and that's really not the case. When the project was set up, when the legislation was passed, they took into consideration, and they wanted to make sure that as Rochester grew, that it was not going to be for a select few, that it was going to be for the entire community of Rochester. So just remembering that there's a lot of people that still have a lot of question marks about some of the different things that occur out there, and to help relay accurate information to them and to answer questions that they may have is really going to be a top priority for myself.
Thank you. So Rochester has had what they would call a traditionally weak mayoral system, which really is a little bit of a misnomer because it just means it's a little flatter. But we do have a charter that allows for a little bit more room for a more dynamic role. So my question is, if elected, how would you take on a more dynamic role, be more active sort of executive in decision making, taking a stand on certain issues? Charlie?
So, like you said, the way that the city charter is written right now is that with the weak mayoral system, we first have to understand the roles and responsibilities of our position as mayor. And having talked with Mayor Brady and having talked with past mayors as well too, typically they have had more of an ambassador type of role that they set out to accomplish during their tenure. However, they were still involved with different policies and decisions that were being made in the city. But I think that because of the dynamics of DMC project, and because of the way that Rochester is growing and changing, that we do need somebody that is going to take a more active role in our city government to help establish different priorities and to make sure that those strategic goals and objectives that we are setting all come together under our the different plans that we have within the city as well too. So if you go back though to the city survey that was conducted here a few months ago, the overwhelmingly response for people's satisfaction of the way that the current system is set up is that they're highly satisfied with the way that our system is. So I don't believe that it's a matter of trying to change the current way that we have it set up, but I think that there's definitely opportunity to grow and to further enhance the way that we do things, especially in the position of mayor.
So I plan to be a strong mayor in a weak mayor system, and that's easily done. And part of that is because I have a background and a love for policy. We're in a time of huge change in this community. It's going to be very important that the next leader understand policy, be able to work in the policy realm, and most importantly, really in the kind of system we have, is build and work those relationships with the city council, individual council members, as well as the administration. Because as long as you understand policy and you work with the players who will make the decision, and in our community, the vote goes to the city council, it's having the relationships, knowing them well, being able to talk policy with them, and share the vision that I would have as mayor with them. And I'm very pleased to see some similarities in the direction I want to go, and as Charlie mentioned, the direction the city council is going, which the city citizens in this city have weighed in on very positively, and that they agree with the direction we're going. So that bodes well for those strong relationships that can be built and be that strong mayor in a weak mayor system, and still be an ambassador for this community, which I've been as a school board member and a legislator, and I love doing.
The mayor does have a role in developing things like the budget, and money matters here in the city. What would you prioritize in terms of the budgetary needs if elected, Charlie?
So, and you're absolutely right. We need to have a well thought out budget each and every year that we go forward with this. And so right now, my priorities would be to ensure that we're getting some of the projects that were started but haven't been completed yet to that completion stage. So one thing that comes to my mind right away is the North Precinct over where the old Think Bank was. So we have a building there that we have people that are occupying space there, but it's not fully functional yet as a true police precinct. There's going to be a need for them to also have a garage there, and the need for that garage is very important for people to understand that it's not a want or a nicety to have. It really is a necessity to have, because when living in the area that we live in the vast temperature swings that we have, to be able to protect the investments that we have of the computer equipment in the vehicles, the onboard drugs like Narcan that they have on there, those all need to be temperature controlled, and we need to be able to make sure that we're doing all the right things, that it creates a functioning North Precinct that's operational, that will then help our citizens as we continue to grow in the future. And so, and there's many other projects that need to be looked at, but again, because of the amount of limited resources that we have, we really have to be able to prioritize those in the right way, because I would love to be able to see the parks, the library, the types of services that we have here in Rochester that has made Rochester what it is, continue to grow, but we're going to have to make sure that that balance is done the proper way.
Well, first I would say that the budget is being worked on right now, and it will be done before we take office. And so our ability as a new mayor to have much say and change the budget that's in play right now is going to be quite small. So moving ahead, I would certainly say that I will work with the City Council and primarily the administration in doing a joint budget. It's not just, as mayor, I wouldn't just let the administration do it alone. I would do it together. It's building those partnerships and relationships again, but collaborating on the priorities. And the City Council has just finished putting together a comp plan. They are currently in the process of working on a strategic plan, and it's through those priorities that the budget needs to be set. It can't be the item of the day that pops up, because there are many, and there are many needs in a city this big, but we have to plan ahead and make a long-term plan, short and long-term plan and goals, and work toward those goals. Certainly emergencies come up and we need to deal with those, but we've been talking here about some needs that we have, and those all have to fit within the priorities that the City Council has already put together, and we can certainly change that moving ahead. But that'll be for the next year. This year will already be done and voted on by the time we take office.
And so for that next year, how would you ensure that the city is a good, responsible and transparent fiscal manager of the budget? Kim?
Well, certainly working with our city administrator, whose job it is, the budget and administration office, to do that. That's not something that the mayor does individually. I would mention that one of the priorities that the new city administrator has worked on is looking at two processes actually, to review our policies and make sure that they are there isn't systemic racism in there. GARE is a government alliance on race and equity, and then an intercultural, we're an intercultural city, and both of those new processes actually have administration and certainly City Council, and I as mayor would be involved in really looking through our policies and making sure moving ahead that we don't set policies that make inequities in our community, but actually looking backward at our policies and seeing if there are things that we have already done, and this includes our budget, but budgets are built on our priorities, so our policies have to be reflected in that budget to make certain that we aren't creating a worse situation and inequities in our community. So I'm really excited about that. There were things I was looking at, and our new city administrator was hired and independently brought some of those to our community ahead of this election, which is exciting.
Well, again, I think that it's just good common sense and good government sense is that we do have to have effective communication and collaboration with all the entities that have a piece of developing that particular budget. So as Kim has mentioned, the city administrator and his team have done a very good job of lining out where these priorities are coming from, and in helping to educate people where they're going to fit as we continue to work towards getting those projects accomplished. But I think the biggest thing is that you need someone who's going to be able to go in there that will lead the city, that has the ability for team building, for consensus building, and that I agree also that with the understanding of those policies, to make sure that we are periodically looking at them as well too, because sometimes we'll have legacy policies that are around that if we look at them and we say, okay, why are we doing this? That it might have made sense why we were doing them 10, 15 years ago, but we have to always view those as living, breathing documents to make sure that we're not doing anything or setting up any artificial constraints that can help us continue to grow and to go forward. So really that collaboration piece is going to be extremely key as we go forward and talk about budgetary issues.
Okay. As we're closing up our conversation here, what makes you best suited for this position? Maybe just one thing you'd like to share before we close here, Kim?
Well, I have a history of proven leadership in this community, representing people in this community for many, many years. And hopefully I'm a trusted and known entity. They know what they'll get. They know that I care about this community and will continue to work for the citizens that live here throughout my tenure.
Well, I believe that my past 30 years of military experience has really set me up to be successful in leading the city as the next mayor. And so all of the things that we've talked about over the last half hour of team building, of consensus building, of understanding planning and strategic goals and objectives, these are things that I've been working on for the last 30 years. And I believe that having the opportunity of having been a citizen here in Rochester, someone that's always been involved in the community, that I'm able to bring some new and different perspectives.
That's all for our conversation today. Thank you both for joining us. And from the University of Minnesota Rochester, we will see you next week.
Can I get you maybe even 3 of these? Coming from a space to teach you of the Pleiades. Can't stop the spirits when they need you. This life is more than just a read through.